So thank you for that very, very kind introduction. And now it's my job to introduce my fellow panelists who are going to be joining me here on the panel. So first, I'd like to call on stage Ashok Banerjee. Ashok is CTO for Enterprise Security at Symantec. And he leads the efforts around threat protection, information protection. And then prior to Symantec, he's worked for Google, Twitter, Flipkart. Ashok has previously led efforts in user growth and recommendation engines at Twitter. And he's done distributed analytics, big data platform, and monetization platforms at Google, and supply chain platform and e-commerce at Flipkart. So very, very proud and honored to have Ashok on the panel. Now, when we talk about all this data driving our smart enterprise, we've got to equally talk about how we connect these pieces of data together and the backbone behind that. So I'd like to invite my next panelist, Maya Strelar-Migoti. She's Senior Vice President of Smart Network Devices and Solutions Group at Marvell Semiconductor. Maya directs 3 business units that are developing and bringing to market cutting-edge products, including IoT, networking, and customer-specific chipsets. And prior to joining Marvell, Maya was the head of the Ericsson Silicon Valley Center, and she's responsible for many globally successful products in microwave, optical packet networks, and IP. And the other thing about Maya, she's also very passionate about promoting diversity in the workplace and engaging diverse people to work together and do their best. She is serving on the boards of the Watermark and ACG Silicon Valley, so very proud of that. I'm very happy to have Maya on the panel. Now, as we talk about smart enterprises and connected enterprises, we also got to be thinking about the large majority of enterprises, which are small and medium businesses scattered across the world. And so I'd like to have Michele Iacovone. He's Senior Vice President and Chief Architect at Intuit, join this panel. Michele drives technology strategy, enterprise architecture. He also does M&A and transformational change management at Intuit. And he's also responsible for technology development with things like Amazon Web Services, which I'm sure all of you are aware about. Everything as a service, network effect platforms that increase speed of innovation. He's going to talk a little bit about these network effect platforms today. So Michele is very passionate about fostering a culture of innovation that makes Intuit a really great place to work. And so we're going to talk about that as well in the context of the smart and connected enterprise. So welcome here, Michele. I'd also like to welcome Sunil Bhatia. He's CEO Designate at Infogain. Sunil is really working to establish Infogain as a leader in digital transformation. He's got over 25 years of experience in leading global organizations such as IBM and Accenture. At one point, he was a partner at Accenture, providing a large amount of consulting in the financial practices. Sunil's very passionate about business models, about monetizing all the technology that we have here. Earlier, when we were talking on the side, Sunil talked to me about the challenges in monetizing advice. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit in our panel. Now, Sunil is also an avid reader, and he's a firm believer in a healthy work-life balance, which I also believe on. So welcome to the panel, Sunil. So with this sort of very strong panel here on the stage, I wanted to set a little bit of context in terms of what are we going to talk about in terms of the smart and connected enterprise. I don't know how many of you hark back to sort of what life was like in 2011, 2012, 4 to 5 years ago. At some level, we think it was no different from how our life is today. But at the same time, if you look at how many of us used a rideshare service, such as Uber or Lyft, on a regular basis in 2011? I don't know. I'm speaking for myself. I didn't use it then. But now here, 2016, I use that all the time. So our world is definitely changing in incremental ways with each year. And here we are as a team talking about how are smart enterprises going to change our way of working coming to the year 2020. As machines, as software starts doing more of the cognitive work. Back in the 1990s, we were talking about all the manufacturing work moving offshore. We're talking about robots doing all the sort of menial tasks or manufacturing-related tasks. How do we as a team look at what does the workforce look like in 2020? What does it look like when more of our cognitive tasks are done automatedly? I think that's something that we'd like to discuss here as a panel. Why and what is driving the need for smart enterprises? Obviously, at the end of the day, it comes to us as users. Maybe we don't like interacting with each other that much. Maybe we actually prefer to get our ride via an app in a very automated fashion, as opposed to picking up a phone and having to talk to somebody and negotiate that. I asked very informally a panel of people on would they prefer to stand in a checkout counter or a check-in counter at a hotel to get their room key, or would they rather do that on their taxi ride to the hotel? And most people prefer to do that in a very automated fashion. So there's an increase in operational efficiency. It gives people, in many cases, a better customer experience. But we have to, of course, focus also on outcome and the security angle of it. Drivers, the underlying technology that makes smart enterprises possible, of course, information being available much more freely, the emergence of artificial intelligence and machine learning, and of course, as our hardware gets a little cheaper, it enables us to use software to define more of the pieces. So when we look at the future of smart enterprises, some of the things we'll be discussing here is what do we see? What do we see in terms of network effects? How do we enable or monetize the increased collaboration that comes from this? And in the end, how do we take all the technology we have, put it front and center, and then enable the human being at the end of the day? So with that, I'll move on to the panel and ask some of the questions that I have for my team. So I had a question for you at first, Michele.
Sure.
And when it comes to Intuit and what you're doing at Intuit, how do you see Intuit enabling the smart and connected workplace, especially when it comes to small and medium businesses?
That's a great question. So first of all, by the way of context, Intuit is a 33-year-old company, $4.5 billion in revenue. We have about 37 million customers, and our customers are small businesses, consumers, and accountants. And traditionally, you may have seen our flagship products of TurboTax, QuickBooks, Mint, and our professional tax products, which are now getting rebranded ProConnect. And a lot of our experience has been in making the customer smart, has been on how do we provide our customers a lens and a set of products for a very specific and narrow needs. And we really believe that as we start to think about making our customers smarter, a lot of that smartness comes from certainly applying some of the drivers that you identified earlier in your slides, but also connecting them. And so I think in Intuit we have a very unique ability to take the 37 million customers in our network and create those network effects where, for example, we know that 89% of our small businesses feel they're more successful when they're connected to an accountant. So how can we use our software and our network to connect them and make them more successful and help them with that? Similarly, our small businesses today a lot of times have to use QuickBooks and create an invoice, print it, put it in an envelope, lick a stamp, send it to a consumer who then probably has it on their desk for a long time, ultimately they decide to do the same thing and send it back and ultimately get paid. Well, how do we use the technology at our disposal to create much smarter e-invoicing capabilities where businesses get paid faster, and we create kind of that Uber moment, if you will, for consumers, where you kind of just like with Uber, you get out of the car and things are paid. You can actually interact that way with your small businesses.
Well, thank you. That's really good, and it's a different way for me to understand a little bit about how Intuit plays together and makes the network effect possible. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to kind of take that question and then take it to Ashok.
Sure.
Ask for his context on how Symantec is helping organizations sort of take these adjacencies and technologies and then increase the security of the information. I mean, especially if a small business is doing a lot of transactions and sharing their accounting information, transmitting that as a service. How does security come into play, and how do we keep them safe?
That's actually a very interesting question. If you think about security, we have an attack surface which is actually increasing, because you've got the company, you've got the supply chain vendors, the contractors, the consultants, and for the hacker, the entire thing is a surface. Where can I get in from? So connectedness is convenience. It gives you velocity, but it increases your attack surface. We are always at odds between convenience and security. So the moment in our personal lives, in our professional lives, the more IoT you have, for instance, if you can open your garage door, it's fantastic. You can see who's coming in, who's going out. You can open your garage door remotely. It's also fantastic for the hacker. He can open your garage door. He can see when you're coming in, when you're going out. If your car can drive out freely, remotely, it's fantastic for the hacker. He can instruct your garage door to open and the car to drive over to him. So that's happening in our professional lives as well. And we are we are literally looking for needles in haystacks. And there are a few of these needles, and they're lethal. So there's a lot more bigger data volumes, much bigger data volumes. It's security sensors, it's IoT. This whole data volume has to go into disks, has to go into networks, go through the networks. Suddenly, disk and network, which we thought were cheap, are no longer that cheap. How do you get this whole barrage of data through? So the adjacencies that are coming in is right from SSD, right from storage. It's even basic things which we thought were not cool 5 years ago, probably compression, massive amounts of compression. So back to you, a whole lot of industries all over.
Yeah, no, definitely. And so, taking that same train of thought, what can people in the small businesses do, and how do they sort of deal with this going forward? Are there sort of areas that you're working on today, or something you can share with us for the future?
Absolutely. So the core area now is unified security. Say, we have individual point products, obviously. And you can see these processes are doing things that are not great. These files are being touched by people who shouldn't be touching it. But really, it's not just point issues. For instance, say Anita could be traveling to China, perfectly legit, could be drunk that evening and mistype a password 3 times.
How did you know that?
Totally acceptable. Could be pulling down the financials of Wipro. Totally acceptable still, but when you put all 3 and then a massive exfiltration of a zip file to Nigeria, probably close to a smoking gun evidence. Yeah. So it's conditional probabilities piling up. The individual pieces are okay. The chain is far from okay. That's one. The second piece, which is of much greater concern, everyone talks about IoT as wearables. That's actually the minimally important thing to me, because what is most important in terms of IoT is not what is with me, it is what is away from me. When I'm in the house, I don't need IoT to tell me what's happening in the house. When I'm walking, it's not that I need IoT to remind me that I'm walking. It's not an involuntary action. What is most interesting is what's happening when I'm away from it. What's happening when every time the train comes through, the bar comes down, stops you. Every time waste is flushed through these actuators and pumps. You can cripple a city completely remotely as these sensors come online. Your toilets will not flush, nothing's working, things are backing up. You will give in a time of war. So the future wars are not about cybersecurity. Actually, World War II was a lot about encryption and breaking the Enigma code. And it's far more today, far more than we think about. So security is definitely much bigger than we think about most of the day. And I'm happy that you don't have to think about it, because someone paranoid like me does.
So with all that said, I wanted to ask, what do you think in terms of, from the Infogain perspective, really trying to digitize corporations? What business models are you seeing companies adapt to sort of monetize all the technology that is available today?
Sure. Just as a quick introduction to Infogain, we've just merged two companies together. We are based out of Silicon Valley, and our charter is essentially to help our customers and partners to become more digital oriented. And I'll just give you a couple of examples of what I'm hearing from especially the large customers and when I go to the boardrooms, what they are talking us. So 3 questions which are really burning our customers and partners are, A, how do I make money out of this? So what is my business model going to look like? Second question which they keep asking is, what should my customer engagement be? How do I deliver value to my customers? And the third question then they ask is, if I get all of those 2 right, then how do I reorganize myself internally, right? These are the 3 big questions they're asking. And I'll give you a couple of examples of how it is changing. So we have one customer which is in a traditional fleet management business. And it's been with us for the last 3 years. And about 3 years ago, we helped them to put this whole on track, which is geolocation based, in all the fleets of the customers that they were doing it. And then we helped them to put a shared services like a command center where they can watch all the trucks which are moving from point A to point B for different customers, right? So that was the initial digital connected devices, gives them a view of what their customers are doing and where the transportation is happening from point A to point B. So far, so good, and they got some money out of it and helped them to this, right? About 6 months ago, we started brainstorming with them, and they came out and said, hey, is there now another business model which is possible? And they said, how about that we become an insurance company, right? Now, this is a company which used to be in a fleet management, watching, goods going from point A to point B, trucks going from point A to point B, and drivers taking it. And the business model they came out now, because of this whole connected devices and the technology of command center and the analytics that they put on top of all of this, which then allows them to say, we will go to our customers and give them usage-based insurance for the drivers that you take. And then they become partners with all the other big insurance companies and with their customers, and now completely a new business model which is emerging, for this particular customer. Now, this is something new which is happening, and what I told you is a smaller scale. A bigger scale of this example, not a current customer of ours, but everybody talked about GE this morning, and I thought it was fascinating. I'll tell you some of the things which you probably heard from about GE. GE has come out and said that they want to become the top 10 software company in the world, right? And probably some of you have heard of this, but now GE is a company which all of us know as jet engines and locomotives and all of that, and they want to be a software company, especially in the Silicon Valley. If you hear somebody say GE is going to become a software company, it is completely bizarre, right? But that is what the Jeff Felt has come out as a vision, and the way they are thinking about it is that instead of selling just a jet engine, which is, again, from an IoT perspective, has 7,000+ sensors, GE is going to collect a lot of data, which is going to come out of this. They are essentially going to the customers and saying, we are going to give you usage-based, as opposed to selling you the jet engine and then helping you to manage the jet engine. You don't have to worry about spending the capital expenditure and all of that. GE will come out and just give you usage based on jet engines or locomotives and things like that. Now, that is completely different GE, because what it now means is if you're a CFO, your balance sheet is going to go up, because earlier you were asset light, now you're going to be asset heavy. If you're a sales guy in GE, completely different model on how you sell. Earlier you're selling a box, now you're going to sell software as a service. If you're the R&D person or the delivery person or the after-sales service within GE, everything is now changing. So this is the kind of business model changes which are happening because of not only the IoT, but the analytics, mobility, and all of these things which are converging together. And I think all of us are in a really fascinating place and a fascinating time. And Infogain is looking to work with customers like that and make sure that the digital transformation journey takes place.
Well, thank you, Sunil. And I want to just switch gears a little bit differently and talk about something that all of us are probably thinking about here in the room, which is if machines are taking over more of the cognitive tasks, and you're having more and more interconnected devices. But at the same time, you have this highly skilled, Generation Y workforce, right? A lot of smart people, more aware, more educated, digital natives. How do we attract the best talent, and how do we bring them into the workplace and bring the most out of our workforce in the time of this sort of very smart and digitally connected enterprise? So Maya, over to you. Did you have any thoughts or comments or experiences that you'd like to share?
It's for every company. It's extremely important to add new workforce that present new world. I have a 17-year-old son, and I'm looking him and his friends, how they function, how their brain works, what matters to them. And I've seen this is a very different than what I have been expecting for my employers, and when I look my generation and I look them, it's very different with millenniums. And I try to figure out what they should do. I was recently, a couple of months ago, on one of Stanford events when someone asked what is the most sought after high-level education in regards to which profession will be needed by 2020, and it came out software engineers and the doctors. And for me, it sounds very reasonable. We are getting sicker, older and older. And in software engineering, if you look Internet of Things happening in front of us and so on, all these little devices will need many software engineers that will be able to put applications on them and leverage them in the best possible way. And now we need to attract the people that will know. We talk about new business models. The business model we talk, who are going to be the early adopters? I am not early adopter. I'm the last one using Uber in my family. I'm the last one taking all this new stuff, waste, and so on and so on. But who is the first adopter? Those ones that were brought in era of connectivity and internet, and the brain works a little bit different. These are guys with different values. They want to work for the company that they believe the company has right attitude, which means in society, in sustainability, in cultural and gender diversity, and above everything, innovation. They don't want to be bored. And if you look, some of these intern students that come into different companies, if you give them a boring job, okay, can you go there and just check when the printer is sort of ready to add some color and so on. They don't want to do that. They want to have jobs that will enable innovation. That's why companies with a strong brand like Google, my son, I want to work in Google. I said, oh, what do you want to do there? Whatever. So some companies have so strong brand that they offer something that is so attractive to the millenniums. Yeah, I'm not going to be bored. I'm going to do something that contributes. I'm going to be seen. I'm going to be heard. And that is for us as employer of the future when we leave our companies towards smart enterprises and business models that should address the dynamic of the world that is happening. We have to think how to bring these people on board. And I have been very passionate about that one and always try to work with a college student, bring them in Ericsson as interns and so on, and working a lot of these different studies and through my Heritage partners. What we as a company, where is the attractiveness for us? If I go to Stanford and so on, how do I attract my niche of the newcomers to the company? And I think every company should be thinking about that to where to go. Marvell is very successful in attracting because Marvell is so technology-driven company. A lot about innovation, deep innovation, forefront of the semiconductor innovation. And we are getting the creme de la creme of all these solid physics students and PhDs that want to join Marvell because their passion is in research and so on. So this is what is our value, our attractive point. Different companies have to say, what is my niche? Whom, and then you go and sell yourself. But extremely important that we should never, as a company, any company, allow too big gender and age gap. Extremely important. You can't have your population that is middle-aged and then you start bringing, those that are coming from university. It does not work. The mixture has to exist permanently. And then you create the best possible innovative, creative dynamic where all these different experiences and those young ones that dare do more bring with this fantastic experience that exists in the company.
Yeah. Well, that's a very good point, Maya. And I would say, Michele, from a small and medium business perspective, I think there will be even more challenges in terms of attracting and retaining talent and sort of making sure that the digital disruptions are meaningfully impacting the business in a good way, right? In their ability to attract talent and retain talent, as well as to develop the business and make it more profitable in the next 3 to 4 years. So what are some of those digital disruptions that you see happening?
Yeah, and if I maybe could even double down a little bit on Maya's message there.
Yeah.
I think this is an area for us at Intuit that we've been looking at, and university hiring, diversity, and young talent hiring has been a key priority. And I think one of the things, the lesson that we've learned is that you have to set target at the executive level and really then kind of provide the cover for the respective budgets across different BUs and functional groups to get those hires in. And you have to be very kind of hard-nosed and continue to drive that diversity. And it's a bit of a flywheel thing. The more you get in, the more attractive you become to millennials and from a diversity perspective. And I think some of the sponsorship from our senior-most leaders has been critical in making that successful and drive. So I wouldn't underestimate that sponsorship from the very top. So with respect to the disruption of from a small business's perspective, and really how do we make them smarter, right? I think I think we talked a little bit about IoT, and we at Intuit see clearly IoT as a very relevant trend, and we're doing a number of experiments in that area. For example, where we have, for instance, modeled car shops where we now can detect time it takes for you to service a car, and instead of typing in invoices for service times, all of that is automatically tracked, right? The fuel, the supplies of oil and filters, as soon as that needs to be replenished, notices can go out to your suppliers, et cetera. We've looked at modeling that even in ice cream shops where, if the temperature of the freezer starts getting below a certain level, you want to make sure that, your goods and supplies that don't go bad. And I think we're continuing to learn and experiment there. But for us, the way to unlock that at scale, given the 37 million customers, is really to build the right platform for developers, third-party developers. We have a very active community with thousands of developers that can build the right vertical solutions across IoT and really help instrument and make leverage the revolution of IoT and make small businesses and consumers smarter. Another interesting project that we're working with right now is also the Alexa Echo platform as well. We have a Mindy, which is a skill for Mint, which allows you to quickly find your balance account, understand where your personal finance is, and as we start to integrate that with our bills pay service, now you can imagine interacting and paying bills in completely new ways and much more comfortable and familiar ways. So those are some of the examples that we're continuing to push on. And then, I think there's, as we look at, so a lot of this disruption and innovation is not just about the small businesses, but also how do we become a smarter enterprise, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's some awesome opportunities there, starting with, one of the interesting things that we're looking at is how do we leverage, so imagine this problem, right? Tax deadline, 30 million people, most of them show up, the last 2 to 3 days. And tax codes are forever changing. So you have about 500 forms for consumers, somewhere between around 5,000 for professional tax accountant, ever-changing tax regulations, ever-changing forms. Keeping up with the coding of that is very difficult. So how can we ingest directly tax code and forms, apply natural language processing, apply AI techniques, and kind of have the system almost in some ways program itself and be always up to date and current to maintain the latest regulatory requirements and meet our customers' needs. So I think that's really interesting technology where we're putting these leading edge technology to help us get a better product out. And then, of course, I think we have a number of, as we talked about, a number of initiatives around connecting these consumers, accountants, and small business in network effects. And for us, this transformation is going to be pretty significant. And Intuit is a company that has already disrupted itself over the years. We started with the desktop products. We've transitioned to cloud. More than 60% of our revenue comes from online and mobile, right? So we've made that very successful transition. But we really see kind of the next wave of, experiencing Intuit less as a set of products that you go to solve particular needs, but more of a network. And so it's going to be much more of a network-first experience as we go lean forward into the future.
Yeah. I just wanted to kind of check and look at our audience and ask if there were any questions that's there from our audience that we can answer and talk to. And then before I say that, I say we've covered a wide variety of topics when it leads to smart enterprises, all the way from large enterprises to smaller ones, looking about how we attract talent in this workplace, also dealing with data security. So I can't see because of the light on my face. If someone can help me out. Yeah, go ahead.
Question for Michael at Intuit. I'm really curious to know how you listen to your customers, because Intuit has thousands and thousands of small business customers. And the idea of smart enterprise is you also have to become different, and also you have to look for innovative ways to listen to your customers. It's not a standard listening to enterprise customers type of model. Would really like to learn what are the best practices there and what you do different.
Yeah, great question. So I think, and this is something that's deeply, deeply ingrained in our culture at Intuit, right? We have this model that we call customer-driven innovation, which is find a big problem, customer problem to solve, that you can solve well, that builds durable advantage. And we believe that great companies sit at the intersection of all those three circles, right? So everything that we do at Intuit, whether it's technology-driven, strategy-driven, always really has a lens on what's the customer problem that we're trying to solve all the time. So that is just something programmed in our DNA, if you will. Then we have a methodology that we use that's called Design for Delight, that we've now, I think formalized over the last 10 years, but frankly has been kind of informally done since the inception of the company. And that methodology is quite simple. It starts with develop customer empathy. So understand what the customer is going through. And in the early days when we were a desktop company, that looked like very much like follow me homes, right? And so we pioneered a lot of the follow me home techniques that a lot of people now follow in the Valley. And I think that is still a great kind of core strength and capability. But in this digital world, at the scale, with the scale that we're operating, you now have to marry that with how do you get the signals from big data, customer behavior, clickstream data, product data, and all those insights, and start to derive much more meaningful signals at the large scale level, right? And so we've really trained ourselves to become a good company of understanding, well, first of all, how to collect the data across our disparate products so we can have a 360 view of the customer, right? And then being able to pick out the right signals. And I would say some of our business units like TurboTax, where again the tax season is very short, are completely addicted to that data, right? If the data data is not there, they feel like they're flying blind, right? So that customer empathy is one big component of our design for delight. The next one is, then going through and this, what we call go broad to go narrow. So, don't fall in love with the solution, fall in love with the problem, explore all the gamut of solutions that you have, and then start to narrow down to kind of what's the right thing that actually solves the problem. And how do you do that? We do that using the third component, which is rapid experimentation. Right? So all too often in companies, it's very easy to, the highest paid opinion in the room wins, right? And the best way to combat that and fight that is to actually have, the voice of the customer reflected there. And that can take a couple of different forms. Again, it's in the old days and even today, right? It could be rapid prototyping, right? And so we actually just came back from a week leadership conference where directors and above in the company, the whole day we spent the day with customers outside, small pod teams, and every 20 minutes, customers coming in through the door, sketching prototypes. This is SVP, directors, and above, directors and above, right? And learning how to get feedback and kind of prototype with customers, right? So that's an important skill that leadership needs to have, engineers, product design, everybody needs to have. And then, of course, again, back in the big data world and in where we live today, it's, well, how do you do that at scale? So this is being able to do A/B testing, being able to push some of this new innovation with customers, being able to understand, which ones are the good experiments, which ones are the bad experiments, having the right services infrastructure so that, when the experiments work, you can quickly scale them and get better results. And so it's combining the art of, learning kind of with very customer intimacy, high customer intimacy, and learning from the data and the signals at large. Did that?
Yeah, good.
That's a very good summary. So one more question.
My question is for Maya. Maya, my name is Ching Valdezgo. I'm a Watermark member, so thank you for serving on the Watermark board. You talked about attracting the best talent. What are your recommendations around growing and developing that talent once they've joined?
So very rarely a company stretches itself to the society and try to the growing right talent for our industry in this country where we are lacking so many engineers, especially in this ecosystem where we need to import people and attract them from different parts of the world as well. We need to spread to the educational system. We need to go to the STEM. We have to, if you want gender diversity in technology, you have to work with the high schools and elementary schools and so on. So there are companies that are doing that program, their organization. I really admire Intel, what they have done, putting $300 million in a fund to encourage STEM education and so on. So developing talent is not once you get someone to the company. Developing talent as a society, it's our responsibility. We start doing that as a conscious companies towards the schools and education. For me, it's very disappointing to see the statistic about Silicon Valley High School, how many of the students that graduate from Silicon Valley High Schools actually have enough knowledge to actually enter the universities. And it's a little bit disappointing. So we need to invest much more into education. But then when you get a talent, when you go for a talent, I think the great opportunity that we have, work with the universities and get interns and enable different programs with the universities where you can benefit of the students working within your domain, but you also develop relationship with the students, and later on you can offer them a job. I'm doing that across my global sites. I'm doing that in India and Israel and here. I believe this is a great way how to connect with the top-notch universities, development, technologies, and then develop that talent that you bring to the company. And then when we come to the company, you can't get a super smart student and so on and give him a task that will actually bore him or her. You have to take care that those talent that you are bringing really are given the chances to contribute and to evolve within the company. So the problem has so many facets, and I think when I go back to that, what I said, we will not have enough doctors, and we will not have enough software engineers in this country, because what university can produce and what industry needs, it's a big discrepancy there. So how we are going to do? Because it is education that requires some bumping in order to get enough people that will be able to use. For example, in Marvell, we are doing, as a semiconductor, we are not doing chips anymore. It's much more of software, a system on the chips. And also easy platform, for example, Easy Connect, which has a software and JavaScript and hardware and so on, in order to be bought in millions of the pieces, and anyone can buy that and develop its own applications. So any single little businesses and so on. But what they will require software engineers, they will require someone that will not understand the business part of it and what kind of business world we want to do and put it into the product. So how do we develop talent in this country that will be able actually to create Internet of Things? Because Internet of Things will be created if we have a huge move in society towards leveraging the technology that exists already in the market.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that.
May I follow up on
Yes.
this? Very good answer. I think when you get a new talent, you don't have a second chance to create a first impression. So that's a very important piece. The other piece is we often look at people and go, mentor this person. What does mentoring a person mean? Do you check in every day? Do you check in every hour? Do you try to watch the person as they work? And that conflicts with autonomy, mastery, purpose that the individuals want. People want to do amazing things. If you look today at the web server, the best web server, most popular one, Apache, free. People did it for free. We can't often pay people to do things, people are doing things for free. Same for MySQL. Same for a whole host of languages and tools. It's autonomy, mastery, purpose, and forming a team which is truly complementary, where we have a chance at taking a shot at the big thing. If you look at sports teams, we build the team as a team. We don't get a bunch of good soccer players, all great forwards, and build a team. We get a goalie, we get a defender, we build a team up that way. Oftentimes in software, we ask exactly the same set of questions to every software engineer when probably we needed some guys in machine learning, some guys who are front end, some guys who are back end. They're different, but it's the complementarity which makes the team a good unit, which makes you believe that you can take on the big thing. So forming a team built as a team to take on the problem makes it realistic. Too much project management kills autonomy. Six Sigma is fantastic when you've nailed it and you want it to come out every time. Every beat comes out the same thing. Six Sigma is terrible when you want innovation. When you want innovation, you want controlled chaos. It's the controlled chaos which will give you the new optimum, the new best.
Oh, very well said.
Thank you.
I was going to add to that.
I'm passionate about this.
I mean, I guess all of us are, right? So, I mean, see, for me, my challenge is trying to, from we have 4,000 people to now 10,000 people. And you know what, one of the earlier speakers, what Amit talked about from a culture perspective, right? And you can do all of these things, and I think, both the speakers laid it out very well. But if you do not have leadership which walks the talk and the culture of the organization is, essentially which is welcoming, friendly, innovative, and all of those things, if you don't do that, all the facades you can put down and do whatever you want, the talent is not staying with you.
Yep.
Right? And that then has, I'm a finance guy at the core, so then all of that has serious implications on your profitability, whether you like it or not, right? It's going to translate into dollars one way or the other for your business. So I would say, yeah, finally at the end of it, it boils down to, as a leadership, are you welcoming and embracing that culture that you speak about, or is it a nice placard that you have, which you just lay down on your boardroom or for your employee, welcome guest or something like that, right? So that usually works out.
Yeah, no, if I would sort of summarize sort of what, as a panel, we very strongly feel about is there's a lot of technology out there. The technology is driving a lot of the behaviors we're seeing. But ultimately, we still need a very smart and strong and capable workforce that's motivated and that's able to interplay with this technology seamlessly, the technology that all of us are creating, and to stay engaged. And like Ashok said, in the end, maybe some of the best works are done for free because people want to do it, but not because they have to. Yeah. So thank you so much to my panel for staying here and answering all these questions. I know we're at the end of the time, but I have a little gift to give to each of them. So I'd be happy to give each one of you a little present. Thank you for being on this panel. Thank you, Sunil.
Job well done.
Thank you, Michele.